Hey, what's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with another part of What If Naruto Love Found in Desert part 2. And this will be the only video that I will be uploading today. And I'm also going up a poll for you guys to decide. uh, I'm thinking of making a movie of What If Naruto into the Narutoverse, and I'm deciding on the three characters of different types of Naruto which should I put in them together. So yeah, help me decide those in the poll. um, and if you haven't, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And without further ado, let's continue our story. That is adorable, Ayame slowly squealed in delight. She looked at the terrified Naruto, who looked like he was about to have a heart attack. What do I do? Naruto asked frantically, looking back and forth between Ayame and the Gaara egg. Nothing bad? Ayame was smiling as brightly as Naruto did. You just made her really happy is all, and probably equally embarrassed. Ayame looked half tempted to tap on the egg sand that covered Gaara. Naruto said slowly as began to calm down himself. His face felt really not right then, and he was probably blushing. Gaara-chan, are you okay? The egg was silent. Then a small part of it crumbled away. Naruto couldn't see inside of it because it was so dark, but he did try. Can you say that again? Gaara's voice was like a pebble rolling down a silk curtain. Naruto blinked at the hole in the egg. When he didn't have any experience with dating, he was fairly certain that this was not normal. You're beautiful? Naruto half said, half asked. But it was all truth. It wasn't something he had ever considered before in Gaara. But she was a bloodthirsty maniac at the time. But now, after seeing her again, after seeing her personality change, and last night Naruto blush returned full force at the thought of last night. After all, that he thought that she was really attractive. There was just something about pale redheads, like he was genetically attracted to them or something. That, and he didn't want either of them to be alone. And what better way to not be alone than together? Right? I see. Gaara's monotone voice echoed from inside the egg again. There was a small silence before the hole really resealed itself. What should I do, Ayame-chan? Naruto asked in a panic. About the egg or her? Ayame asked with a smile. She was happy it was slow at the moment so that she could continue to watch this. Both, Naruto offered. He was completely clueless. I mean, I can probably break the egg with the Rasengan, but that seems violent, Naruto half boasted. Just stay calm, and she'll come out on her own. She showed up, so she clearly wants to spend time with you, Ayame said, smiling. She then looked at the egg. Smaller finger white line began to appear on it. Oh, hey, she's writing something, Tenoichi said, smiling. He'd been listening to the whole conversation for a while now. He was very happy Naruto chose his stand to be the place for his first date. Just like the time Kushina dragged Minato here when I first opened, Tenoichi thought happily. Minus the sand, that is. He found him giggling as he prepared his special super secret love forever noodles. There wasn't anything special about them. No simple ingredients, just simple noodles that were stretched into circles and then cut. Just a small difference in how they were made. And the fact that Tenoichi believed they were special, he had given Kushina and Minato the same noodles, so he had a bit of faith. What it says? Naruto asked, excitedly bouncing on his seat. Ayame smiled as she leaned in closer to read the words. Let's see. It says, you look good as well, Naruto. This is just so cute. Ayame half squealed. Naruto smiled and blushed. Hehe, thanks. Naruto said, the Gaara egg. But can you come out now? The egg was silent, and then the sand fell. Gaara's face was once again the emotionless mask the world was accustomed to her wearing. Her body language was cool and calm. She believed that she would be able to maintain this composure for the entirety of the date. But with the way her heart was going bub 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 bub, she knew it was going to last no longer. Maybe she'd have a heart attack before things go much worse. So, what'll you lovebirds have? The composure didn't last long at all. Perhaps if Ayame knew that she was teasing the two of the most powerful shinobi in the future, she might not be teasing them so much. Then again, she probably would. Gaara shifted her gaze to Naruto. The blush on his face brought her on no small amount of relief. She wasn't going to suffer alone. She was going to cling on to Naruto and drag her down to hellish emotion of embarrassment so that she wouldn't suffer alone. Order for me, she commanded Naruto. Naruto was shocked by her demand. Well, what do you like? Naruto offered. He didn't want to give her something she hated. If he gave her something she hated, then she would hate him, and that would be the opposite of what a date was supposed to do. At least according to Naruto, which was according to Sakura. Then again, she had never been on a date either. I don't know, I've never been out eating ramen before. A small smile crept into Gaara's face as she watched him squirm. Oh, so that's why people did it. Naruto's face twisted back in between shock and horror, and then finally revelation. Did he find out what she was doing? Gaara's offense was falling and failing, and she had no defense or any form of counterattack. Well, what's your favorite food, Gaara-chan? Naruto asked sincerely. He's somebody Naruto asked sincerely how somebody could never have eaten ramen was a completely foreign concept to him. It was something that needed to be fixed, and Naruto sought to make it the best first experience ever. Gaara was taken aback by this question. It allowed her to collect herself once more again. Salted tongue. Gaara replied simply. Naruto nodded once as he proceeded to answer, trying to find something that tasted like salted tongue. Wait, humans had tongues? He had a tongue. Didn't Gaara used to kill people? Gaara watched Naruto's face twisted in horror. Was it something she said? Why was he suddenly realizing that he didn't want to be here with her? And then she realized what it sounded like. Cow tongue. She explained, her face growing hot as she watched Naruto's face twist from horror to relief. Oh, haha, that makes a lot of more sense now. Naruto scratched the back of his head in an attempt to shake off the embarrassment. Gaara began slowly, never made me eat them. She didn't know Ayame, but she needed to know what that Naruto knew she never actually ate somebody. It seemed entirely important enough to risk letting other people know about her fighting against Shikaku. That's good. Let's get you the beef ramen then. It's from a different part of the cow than the tongue. Gaara almost wanted to point out that they were very different, and just because she liked one didn't mean anything, but decided to drop it. One miso ramen and one beef ramen, Ayame. Naruto shouted happily. Coming right up, Ayame said happily. She walked into the kitchen and then decided to work on making them. And she decided that she needs to make the mood happier by it was waitress's rule number one her father taught her in the training list. And then came the horrible awkward silence on the first date, where neither of the two knew what to say. Naruto's eyes kept dancing around. It was only ramen, so he had to wait like 5 minutes tops. But for Naruto, those 5 minutes felt like an eternity. He kept looking at Ayame, back to Gaara, her face, her eyes, her hair. That lovely red hair. What was it about red hair again? He was just drawn to it. It was why he thought Sakura was pretty. He settled, staring at her hands. Gaara was like Vase having a panic attack. She paid infinitely close attention to the grain on the counter, its every single line, a twisting swirl maze. She also desperately wanted to pay attention to anything but Naruto. She was failing the task in every sense. He saw his eyes dart around the room. Did he think Ayame was pretty? Why was he looking at her? Was something on her face? Avoid eye contact, stare at wood. Why is he looking at my hair? Why does he like my hair? Is that all he likes? Why is he looking at my hands? So Naruto began so smoothly, but a bit of swayness in his voice, just a bit, like a grain of swayness in an ocean of awkwardness. About last. The world went in slow motion. He was going to say last night. He knew he did something tell him. Did somebody tell him? Who was she going to kill? Everybody? Everybody sounds good. Very plausible option. Everybody but Naruto. She needed him for sleep. Wait, maybe she just needed his body. He was forming the end. Now she could see his tongue touching the floor of his beautiful mouth. Wait, beautiful. No, time to think need to shut him up. Can't hear the question, can't let him know. If she guessed him, that would shut him up. Wait, what? No, that would make things worse. Wait, her sand. Sand was good. That were the thoughts of Kara. Naruto watched as the sand began to swirl around Gaara. Damn it, not again. He needed to talk to her, to find out what happened last night, to let her know that he enjoyed it. That it was her that stopped his nightmares last night. He needed to know that she knew, but he was bad at words. Action. He was good at actions. Not again. Naruto started jumping towards Gaara as her sand cocoon formed around her, with Naruto half trapped inside of it. Why am I so... Ugh? Gaara asked herself in the dark of her egg. She was alone, with just her thoughts. Naruto was close enough that Shikaku wouldn't be bugging her. Is this what being alive felt like? So empty-headed, she could literally feel herself think. So what? Naruto asked in the darkness, as his voice rang in the egg. She could feel his breath. How could she not notice it before? His face was so close. She could feel his heart. It was making her melt. The undeniable warmth she had felt this morning when she woke up in his arms. Arms? One of his was touching one of hers. On that hand, they were touching skin to skin. Is this sex? Was she going to get pregnant? Oh yeah, about last night. Gaara froze. How was she going to explain herself? How was she going to tell him that she found out that she could sleep next to him without Shikaku or coming out only because she was trying to kill him? I don't care how you ended up in my bed, but I really like it. It was nice. Wait, what? Can you repeat that? Gaara felt like she was going to ask that a lot with Naruto. There was too much to process. I like sleeping next to you and waking up next to you. Naruto said honestly, his legs was twitching outside of the cocoon and he couldn't really move around much. He grabbed one of Gaara's hand with his own, but the other was stuck inside the sand. There was no blush where Gaara heard his words. No sense of embarrassment, no shyness. The only thing that Gaara felt was a wave of utter happiness wash over her. That happiness made her do something stupid, and quickly turned into embarrassment. Me too. Gaara mumbled happily as she kissed Naruto on the nose. Naruto's world went blank as he felt the rough, chapped lips of Gaara surrounded the tips of his nose. Oh, so briefly. His first kiss. His first real kiss. It was on the nose, but that didn't matter. It was real and from a girl. That last part was important. A kiss on the nose from Gaara. That was more important. Oh, and she liked sleeping with him. Bonus. We should continue our date, Naruto said once his mind was able to fully process reality again. And suddenly he was falling to the ground, but the sand caught him and gently guided him to the floor. He stood up quickly and saw Gaara staring at her bowl of ramen. He saw his own. Thanks for the meal, Naruto shouted enthusiastically as he split the chopsticks. Thanks for the meal, Gaara repeated and mirrored Naruto's splitting of the chopsticks. She saw him happily slurp up some noodles. She had never eaten ramen before, or any other kind of soup. She quickly found out the beef ramen was awesome. Then the thin slices of beef mixed well with the veggies and broth. She ate one of those first. With a satisfied slurp, a bit of the juices slapping up into her face, she eeped in surprise. She quickly looked to see Naruto smiling at her, having paused from his own meal, an act that seemed to amaze Ayame. Is it good? Naruto asked hopefully. Gaara simply nodded and decided that action spoke louder than words. She began slurping up moderate portion of noodles. She tried everything in the dish one at a time, and then she got to a weird stir with a pink swirl in the center of it. It looked like a cookie, kinda, but had the texture of an egg. It was spongy. Timidly, she took a bite out of it. Ow, she heard Naruto say as soon as she bit down. She quickly turned her head towards him. Was he hurt? Did somebody hurt him? Was she going to have to bury somebody? Then she saw him smiling at her. She felt her blush returning. He was pulling a joke on her. Ow? Gaara asked as she finished her biting of the weird thing. It was quite tasty. You bit me, Naruto accused, pointing a finger at her with a large smile on his face. Gaara blinked. She didn't understand his joke. No, I bit into this thing. Gaara didn't like that Naruto was giggling at her. He should be giggling with her. That is Naruto Maki, Gaara-chan. Gaara blinked at his explanation. And I'm Naruto Uzumaki. She continued to blink. I see. She stared at the Naruto opened wide and ate the whole thing in one bite. Naruto tastes good, she said with a small smile on her face as she resumed looking at her own ramen. She saw his blush and as he resumed eating his ramen. Oh my. Ayame squealed happily from the counter. While she would never consider a ramen date romantic, these two were unbelievably cute. She blamed Ninja. She saw it just floating here in the ramen. A perfect little Narutomaki, just sitting there, unguarded. Her strike was quick and sudden, a single noodle of her own ramen trailing behind as she went for Naruto's Narutomaki. Success, target acquired, delivering package to mouth. Hey! Naruto whined as she saw Gaara eating his Narutomaki. She gulped it down, formed a small smile on his face. Why'd you do that? He asked with a pout. No cannibalism. Gaara deadpanned as she resumed eating her own. She couldn't help but smile a bit more as she heard Ayama and Tenuichi let out a hearty laugh from behind the counter. That's mean, Gaara-chan. Naruto pouted before a smile broke out onto his face. He wisely considered the notion of stealing one of her beef slices in retaliation, but decided to let her have this victory. I'll pay, Gaara said firmly. The meal was over and it was time for their first lover's quarrel. No, I'll pay besides, I asked you out. Naruto huffed, pulling out his wallet. Actually, it was Sakura Haruno, Gaara said flatly. Naruto blushed. So I'll pay. How about it on the house? Tenuichi said happily. So long as you two come back in the future, Tenuichi said with a smile. Thank you, Gaara said, bowing towards Tenuichi. She then slowly turned to Naruto. What now? Neither of them had any idea. Psst, Naruto! Talk to her for about a walk around the Konoha, Ayame said loudly whispered at the blonde boy. Yes, that's a good idea. Thanks for the free food, Naruto said happily as he opened the flaps for Gaara. He didn't have to lift it up very high for her. Gaara was unsure of what would happen now. What would happen without the distraction of food? Would he found out that he hated her, just like everybody else? And then she saw him smile at her. She gave him a small smile back, easily slipped under the flap. Ayame turned to her father, her eyes sparkling with mischief. So, what do you offer to pay for their meals? She asked, nudging her father. Tsunade-sama will pay for gossip on those two, Tenichi said with a small smile. Being a ramen stand owner is in a ninja village, he had two currency, money and information. Naruto was completely aware of everything he was saying. His lips were moving and sound came out. It was such an easy thing to do, but he honestly couldn't remember what he was talking about. Not that he ever did. One thing though was that he remembered every single reaction Gaara had to his words. He told her about the mission to wave at least twice at this point, about the fight with Orochimaru and about the time he painted the Hokage monument. Gaara was wisely aware of what Naruto was talking about. She wasn't bored by any means. She was thoroughly entertained for most of it. It was just that Naruto was so distracting and he talked so much. He talked enough for 1 3/4 people, which was absolutely fine because she barely spoke enough for a quarter of a person. Though they talked enough for 2 people, perfect match. That, and she really wanted to sleep right now. She had gone years without sleeping before. Now she couldn't imagine how she'd make it until night, not with Naruto and such a blissful rest so close. And if he wanted to hold her again, she wasn't going to complain. She wanted him to hold her now though. Eyeing his hand slightly, she felt her cheeks heating up. That would be lewd though. It was then that she became aware of the stares of the villagers. Naruto noticed Gaara's silence. It was longer than it normally was. He wanted to know what she was thinking, his nose still tingling warmly from where she kissed him. That simple gesture would have him beaming for months. That was when he saw her turn her head, her small warm smile fading for the first time all day. She avoided eye contact like a plunge. It was then his eyes slowly widened in realization, and then he too became aware of the stares. They're glaring at us because their thoughts echoed with one another. I attacked their village, but her was a recent guilt of the Kyuubi. And his was an old scar. I'm ruining our date. Their conclusion was in unison. The mood of Twitter passion lifted the two quickly. There they were standing in the middle of a busy street. Parents and ninjas alike were all glaring at them. They went out their way to leave them alone in the cold world. Gara became aware of Naruto's silence. It never lasted this long before. She looked over him fully. Seeing his frown instantly made her realize that she was also frowning. Now he thought that she didn't want to be with him, that maybe she had somehow grown tired of him. Her frown deepened. To hell with these villagers thought about her. To hell what they thought about Naruto. She calmed him quickly, right there in the street, bare skin touching matte bare skin, before slowly entangling themselves in one another. The sands offered them a privacy, encasing them in its embrace. It was going to get very hot. She smiled at him as she held his hand. Naruto to jump as Kara grabbed his hand quickly. Kara-chan, he asked suddenly with a half stutter. He felt her weave her fingers in between his own and gripping tightly. His frown snapped into a smile. He watched in curiosity as a bit of Kara's sand covered their hands. This was their string of fate. Kara blush was an amazing thing to behold. Let's go, where there are less people. Kara said with the slightest of smiles. It was a small, warm thing, and it made Naruto's heart go pity pity pat. I'm not even joking, that's what it is written here. Anyways, back to the story. He silently decided to see just how big he could make her smile. I know, just the place, Kara-chan. And so, Kara found herself running after Naruto as he pulled her along by their sand-encased hands. Though truth to be told, Naruto had no idea where he was going. That didn't matter though, as long as he was going somewhere with Kara, that all did matter. They ended up at a log that served as a natural bridge between near training grounds and the village. Their hands were still encased in sands. They were swimming in sweat. It was becoming mildly unpleasant. Kara-chan, Naruto asked as he slowly began leading her across the log. He heard her low, It was quiet sound and he was grateful that they were away from all the people. Only he wanted to hear that. It was so cute. Do you mind letting my hand go? It's getting kind of sweaty, he said as he didn't want to let her go now. But he didn't want to have their hands swimming in sweat either. The sand's a little warm. Sorry, Kara said with a blush, forcing the sand down away from them. She exclaimed, her own slightly moist hand silk with the combination of hers and Naruto's juices. It would be easy to go days without washing it in Suna. Just what was Naruto's doing to her? Is this who she really was without Shukaku? I have an idea, Naruto said cheerfully. He stepped down onto the water. A soft glow separated him from the water. He was getting quite good at water walking. It was almost second nature at this point. Reaching up, he grabbed Kara's dry hand with his own and led her further down the log before sitting down on the log, all but dragging her down with him. See? Nice and dry. My butt's wet, Gara observed without complaint. Naruto looked at her and then he began to smile in amusement, with developing into chuckles. It was a slow start, laughing building with each chuckle before it exploded into a roar of laughter. Gara was offended for all of a second, worried she said something odd for twice. She then realized what she had said before she smiled and began joining him in his laughter. It was infectious, a bubbling disease that killed sadness and brought people together. Gara voyagely wondered why nobody had ever tried to conquer the world with such laughter. It surely wouldn't be too hard, or at least much easier than a force. Naruto's laughter slowly died down as he heard Gara's laughter. He looked endearingly at her. It was a sweet and raspy sound, a pleasant combination of coldness and warmth, like coming into a warm cabin after a blizzard. Once again, Naruto found that he wanted to hear that sound as much as possible. The laughter died down, and both let out a heavy sigh. And then, for Gara, reality crashed down. She wanted to spend as much time with Naruto as she could, but this would likely be the only time they could do it. Perhaps she was wrong about this dream. She knew what her duty was, to be the Kazekage, but what about his dream? Would he be able to follow her? Naruto. Gaara began slowly as she fiddling with his thumb slightly. She instinctively gripping his hand oh so slightly tighter. What are your plans for the future? Her shoulders slumped like she just dropped a heavy load. Naruto tensed as though she had just given him the heavy load. He sighed, looking to the skies, noting the orange, blushy clouds. Well, first thing I need to get is get Sasuke back. I made a promise to Sakura-chan, and he's kind of like my brother, you know. The sun was getting low in the sky behind him, but there was still time before it sets. Then after that, well, first thing I need to do is get Sasuke back. I made a promise to Sakura-chan, and he's kind of my brother, you know. Then sun was getting low in the sky behind them, but there was still time before it set. Then after that, Naruto had an innate sense of dramatic timing, or at least he liked to think he had. After that, I became Hokage. That way, everybody will respect and acknowledge me. What about me? Probably the worst question to ever be asked on their first date, with the exception of Rock Lee, who once asked a girl to marry him. Naruto looked at Gaara with widened eyes. She was squeezing his hand painfully tight. I'll figure out something. Besides, you might get sick of me before you know it. Naruto was attempting to defuse his situation. He didn't want the mood to be this heavy. Really didn't want it right now. The date was the only thing that was keeping his recent failure out of his mind. No, Gaara said suddenly to what he had no idea. It is your dream of becoming Hokage. It is something I know that you will achieve. Naruto didn't know it right then, but that was when he fell in love with Gaara. She believed in his dream, she believed in him. And I'm going to become Kazekage, she muttered. That's great, Gaara. We'll be able to bring peace to our villages. Naruto declared happily. The idea of people not killing each other resonated in him deeply. Gaara released his hand and held her own slightly moist hand in her lap, clenching her fists. Indeed, Gaara sat swallowing a lump in her throat. Her tear stalk felt moist for the first time in years. She gritted her teeth. That's why for our villages this stops after today. Her knuckles were white. With Naruto she didn't have to fear what would happen if she fell asleep. With Naruto she was able to feel emotions that she had long since suppressed. But for her village she would give that up. She would damn herself to those sleepless nights once again. But Naruto wouldn't allow that, would he? Nope. That simple word shocked and scared Gaara more than any other word she had heard. She simply looked dryly and deeply into his eyes to see them so fully of conviction. It was slightly jarring. The gaze seemed like if he wanted the world he could go ahead and take it and nothing would stop him. It doesn't matter what anybody says else, Gaara-chan. If this is something that you want, then I will break every rule in the book to make it happen. That's the promise of a lifetime. Believe it. That was the second time he made a promise today. The chances of my village allowing it are practically zero, Gaara said softly. She was touched by these words and she didn't want to offer him false hope. But my chances aren't zero, Naruto asked, his smile growing wide. There's a good as 100% chance. It was called the Will of Fire because even the smallest of sparks could ignite it into another large flames. It was an infectious thing that it left unchecked would spread through the world like wildfire, and so Gaara found herself to be one of the few ninjas outside of Konoha to be infected by the Will of Fire, because the Will of Fire within Naruto burns brighter than the sun. She had tried to remove his false hope. Instead, with a few words, Naruto had removed her fears and left them with hope. It was not a lie. It was not some false comfort for her to rely on in desperate times. It was a promise, the promise of a lifetime. Gaara would hold and nurture herself in Will of Fire. She would believe in Naruto. With a sudden flurry of sand, Gaara grabbed a hold on Naruto. He yelped in surprise as his right arm was dragged out behind Gaara's back and his butt was lifted also slightly off the log. He was dragged towards Gaara. A short, quick motion as the gap between them was practically non-existent. He found his arm wrapped around her waist, his hand resting on her slightly hips. She leaned into him, resting her red head on his shoulder. A soft wind blew by. Thank you, Gaara said with a small smile, and there, in the middle of the forest, in Naruto's embrace, a single tear The first tear in many years slowly slid down her face. She allowed herself to drift off to sleep once again. She did have roughly 7 years of sleep to catch up on. Naruto just smiled as he held on to Gaara, staring at the sky as it slowly turned color. It would be starting soon. It was why he brought her out here to the middle of the forest. Naruto wasn't naturally romantic. Shizune had told him about the stop at this spot, and a boy had once taken her out here on a date during the summer. She remembered it more than she remembered the boy. Slowly, the silence began to fade as the nocturnal insects began to light up. A group of toads also appeared. Was that Kamakichi? It was. What was he doing here? Who were the other toads? What were they doing? A rock gently hit Naruto in the head. It got his attention as he whipped his head around. He looked forward with half-lit up eyes at the culprit. Jiraiya was standing there in the middle of the forest, his hands making an OK symbol, while he winked at Naruto. Naruto simply raised his eyebrow as Jiraiya slowly vanished from the sight. He waited for a moment before turning to look at Gaara. She was asleep, oh so softly in his arms. It was almost time. He heard the toads start their quacking. It was rough at first, but then quickly took on a more melodic sound while being complemented by the sound of thousands of insects chirping. Then the light came. A soft glow from the base of the pond illuminated the whole place. Shizune had said the place glowed, but he wasn't expecting this. Then he saw it. Small toads swimming in the water making some kind of glowing lantern, and he smiled. Jiraiya wasn't half bad after all. The insects began to fly, glowing in the darkness of the sky. And Naruto knew what he had to do. Slowly letting go of Gaara, making doubly sure that she wouldn't fall over, he stepped down on the water. Gaara-chan. He spoke softly but loudly. Her eyes opened slowly before blinking twice and immediately looked onto his scene. She wasn't that into her sleep, so she forgave him this time. May I have this dance? He held a small hand out towards her. He only had a vague notion of dancing thanks to an impromptu mission with Jiraiya, but that was more than most shinobi would ever have. Gaara looked around in stunned silence. Naruto marveled at the way the light brought out the color of her eyes. She was even more beautiful. Gaara, on the other hand, looked around at the scenery. She had never came across something so beautiful in her life, and the fact that she was experiencing it with him made this the best day of her life. I don't know how. Gaara blushed slightly as she slowly took Naruto's hand. She slid down onto the water from the log. Her hand stopped the water from touching her feet, and she found herself floating an inch above the water, staring right into Naruto's eyes. Naruto chuckled. That's okay, follow my lead, Naruto said with a small smile. It was just like the lady he had to dance with during that mission. Jiraiya watched with a smile as he saw Naruto lead Gaara through the dance that he had taught the boy. It was a simple enough for four-step dance. He had a feeling that if he wrote down and put it one of his books, that it would be a fan favorite sense. But he couldn't do that to Minato and Kushina, and he wasn't going to do that to Naruto and Gaara. That they remind me of them, you know, Jiraiya said as he felt Tsunade appeared behind him. She sighed. There must be something in Namikaze blood that makes them fall in love with redheads, for ninjas that have a demon in them, Tsunade said with a twitching eyebrow. She then smiled at the duo. The toads, your touch, and the lights? Jiraiya said softly. Dance too. Had a feeling that Brad would end up benefiting from knowing how to dance. He hadn't turned to face Tsunade yet. He was lost in the past as he watched Naruto twirl Gaara oh so gently over the water. You know, if your dates were as nice as this, I might have actually gone out with you once, Tsunade said with a small smile. Watching those two was like taking a trip back in the past. Jiraiya shifted his gaze and looked into Tsunade's eyes at that statement. Who's to say for you they wouldn't be, Tsunade Hime? She wanted to punch that smile off of his face. Naruto, Gaara said, after dancing for an unknown amount of time. The moon was full above their heads and the water beneath their feet glowed a soft hue. It sounded like their thoughts band was beginning to get tired as well. What is it, Garcha? Naruto asked, stopping their dancing movements. They had been doing the same 4 steps over and over again, but neither one of them cared about that. I'm tired. Naruto smiled at that. He was feeling tired too, and he hoped that being tired wouldn't mean they would be sleeping in the same bed again. Can I stay with you? Gaara's voice was distant thing as she was already beginning to feel the lulls of sleep once again. She let out a soft squeak as Naruto quite literally swept her off of her feet. Of course, Gaara-chan. Naruto shouted excitedly as he sped off backwards to Konoha. He had never been so excited to go to bed before. Gaara resisted the urge to call him an idiot, gripping his shirt tightly as she began to drift to sleep. It was so comfortable. It came so easily to her now. The thought of accidentally falling asleep once she was away from Naruto terrified her, but she would be strong, at least until the next time she ran into Naruto. Dad had briefly considered taking Gaara back to the hospital, but that place was creepy. He had wisely considered finding out where Gaara stayed, but Temari and Kankuro both scared the piss out of him, so that only left his apartment. His messy, unsanitary, boy-selling and smelling apartment. Never before had Naruto wished that he kept his apartment clean. When he arrived at his home, he saw a note on the door as he slowly maneuvered Gaara around so he could grab the notice. In the curliest handwriting, he knew it simply read, "You owe me, Sakura Haruno." Opening the door came in to see his apartment nearly spotless. He made a mental note to thank Sakura again later on. He quickly navigated his way to his room, Gaara peptide frame still in his arms. He opened his door to his bedroom. His sheets were clean, all the garbage on the floor was gone. There was no random boxers, it was simply clean. And still he's judging by the giant ramen poster nearly the bed. He really needed to thank Sakura later. Gently setting Gaara down on his bed, he began his nightly ritual. It mostly involved brushing his teeth and changing into his sleeping wear. He wondered if Gaara would be okay by herself for just a few minutes. When he returned, he saw Gaara ground sitting off in the corner. He wisely wondered where that was the whole day. He saw Gaara sitting up in the bed, her cold green eyes wide with fright. "Where were you?" Gaara asked, the fear in her voice palpable. She was very good at knowing fear. She could taste it and smell it in others. She could taste her own fear. It made her stomach twist. "Brushing my teeth," Naruto said, sitting on the bed next to her. She slowly reached out to touch his arms, as though appearing to make sure that he was real. "It's dangerous to leave me while I'm sleeping." Gaara said flatly, getting an apologetic smile from Naruto. She was so relieved that he wasn't some figment, that this whole thing wasn't some vile construct from Shikaku to get her to drop the guard as she had so carefully been building up. She stood up suddenly, grabbing one of Naruto's shirts and walked to his bathroom. "Remember, that's in the morning." Naruto chuckled and began to make himself comfortable in his bed. While his bed wasn't the biggest, it could fit two, but he had a feeling he was going to be used as a teddy bear tonight. He was becoming surprisingly okay with it. Not that he was a teddy bear, his manly pride would not permit such a title. Gaara walked in a few minutes later. Naruto would never have thought that seeing a girl wearing one of his shirts would make him so happy. It was an odd sight. Well, he wasn't the biggest boy. Gaara wasn't the biggest girl either, so she was comfortably floating in one of his t-shirts. She sat down next to him. He could smell the mint mouthwash on her shirt. Gaara was nervous. Before, Naruto had been asleep and completely unaware that she was sleeping next to him. Now she had literally asked if she had his permission to sleep next to him. So why was she nervous? Why would he put her arms around her again? She hoped so, that it would happen, though she only got to enjoy it for the briefest of moments before the blonde Hokage forced them apart. "You think too much," Naruto said, slowly pulling her down next to him. Gaara could only blush as she got her wish with the arms. She quickly found her face buried into Naruto's chest, her bare legs tangled with his pajamas legs. She wiggled her arms around Naruto's torso and hugged him tight as he dropped his arms around her. "Good night, Gaara-chan." "Good night, Naruto." Took them both within moments. The world going to be a peaceful sleep, finally giving solace to the two souls. Link break. In the morning, Naruto awoke to a Gaara-less bed. A simple note was tapped to his forehead. He also felt like his nose had been kissed. The writing was crude and simple. Naruto was understanding the calligraphy easily. Naruto, I have taken one of your shirts and jackets with me. If you wish to have them back, come to Suna. Kara. She didn't really need to sign it. Well, anyways, this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. I hope you like this one, and if you do, please leave a like and subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel. And this will be the only video that I'll be posting today. I know I have told you guys I'll be posting double uploads or a movie, but due to some family circumstances I will not be able to. So yeah, this is about Uchiha and I'm signing out. Peace.